Hey Jeremy, how you doing?
Hello.
Jeremy, where are you located?
I currently live in Oklahoma.
Okay, but you do a lot of work like in Texas, don't you?
All over the Midwest. I've done stuff all over the country, but I like sticking to the Midwest.
Yeah. Where do you live in? Where do you live in Oklahoma?
Outside of Ada.
Okay, I did some of my most fun appraisals of my life in Ada, where
It just got hit kind of with another storm, so
yeah, it seems like there's always business near Ada. I don't know why. But like for the
it's
last
growing.
10 years, it just seems like either we're getting bad tornadoes or hail or whatever.
Oh, I'm lucky my house is still here after a couple months ago. All those tornadoes. I mean, they were a couple within 5 miles, and
I, I live in the South, and we get to see our main perils come from a long way away. Like if you get killed by a hurricane, it's because you are stupid. It is
yeah,
just natural selection taking place. But like when the alarms go off for the tornadoes in the Midwest, I mean, it's like we have about 60 seconds. I mean, it's just it's coming with a vengeance. Like
you
it's
have to be
bad.
ready.
Yeah, and I did have I did have the fortune. It was felt like misfortune at the time, but I did have the fortune to be in the Midwest when they had a very large tornado, um, and have to go through that the alarm went off and we're standing in this house and everybody's just like everybody downstairs, like right freaking now, like they didn't ask me to go, they just grabbed me and drugged me,
Well,
and
and
this is
some of
like,
the ones that killed the people were at 2 in the morning. And who's
yeah,
gonna be ready for that if you're sleeping? And it's
yeah, it's
a little
true,
different.
it's true. But we were going to talk about appraisal a little bit today, and you had kind of some specifics about TWIA, and I think that by itself is something that's not understood by most people. Is how
Different.
TWIA affects pretty much everything in the claim process.
Oh yeah.
So just pretend that we don't know anything about it, okay? That we don't know what TWIA is, and just kind of explain it.
It's just the insurance by the coast, pretty much is how I explain it.
And it's the insurer of last resort, basically,
A
by the
lot of the
coast.
people won't cover people over there just because of the risk. So I mean, it's a lot of people have to get it, and it's a little different process that a lot of people don't know about. And with the recent hurricane, it's gonna become an issue.
What's different about the policy?
Um, the way the money is split up on the fees for the appraisal. Normally, it's each person pays their appraiser and then the umpire split. TWIA's is you split the whole pot. So you add up both appraisers' fees, umpire's fee, and then that's split 50%.
Oh wow! So you could get in a real trick bag there, couldn't you?
I've got some calls from people asking what they can do about it after the award's signed, and you know, it's what the policy says. So their appraiser was at 500 or 750. Carrier appraisers at 8 grand. They got 10 grand, but a lot of that's gone.
Right. I mean,
So it's important to know before.
yeah. I mean, you're gonna have to. I mean, to me, if you're going to go into one of those files, you're going to have to pretty much know what you're looking at going in, like you're
Definitely.
like your most exposure to figure out if somebody can afford it. I've
Oh
got
yeah,
a
yeah. A lot of times it's not even worth it, and
right. Well, the thing that I always find that I shouldn't say I find interesting, but like I've got an appraisal out in South Dakota where the 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 umpire's retainer is like 10 grand, and you know that doesn't sound terrible until you understand it's a $61,000 loss.
yeah, that's
I
it's
mean,
not worth it at that point.
no, and like so the insured's like, I can't do that, and yeah, it's just I just think as people in the business, we have to have we have to have something that calibrates what we're doing. Like it should be relative to the effort. Like you shouldn't be charging $500 to deal with $1 million loss, but you
Yeah,
probably shouldn't be charging $1 million loss levels to do a single family home roof.
No, it's not. It's not worth it at that point. And
Yeah.
it makes it tough to do, 2 site visits if you have to go to an umpire meeting and, on a, a $40,000 claim and just,
Yeah, it's a mess. And then of course have to wait for 3 months or 4 months for that guy to schedule it, and 3 or 4 months for that guy to actually send an award, which
yeah,
I think we should
after
just drag them all out to sea and say, you lost.
it's, I don't think it's all people just being lazy. I think there's just, appraisals. There's a lot more going on, and so that means there's just fewer people that know what, really is going on and how to do them. So
I think so.
I'm picking an umpire. He's going to be an expert at something, or a really good one.
Yeah, and well, the thing that always gets me is it's oftentimes the simplest ones are the ones they'll just push down the road a long way because there's not much to them. And I always think it's a manner of cruelty when you have to go to umpire just to wait a long time. I also think it's a manner of cruelty to most everything in Texas because they want to make it wait. What they take an average claim and just stretch it out.
Yeah, it's something you have to deal with. There's ways to push it along, but that's a game plan.
Yeah,
They get people frustrated and they go away, and it works sometimes.
I've been changing my SOU DOA language a little bit to get everybody to agree to certain timetables. And I've had some people sign it. I've had some people balk at it. I've changed who the umpire was because he wouldn't follow it. So it's got some. I mean, I think that we have some modalities in our game to move things along. I mean, I always say in appraisal, if you and I were in appraisal, Jeremy, and we decided we were going to arm wrestle for the gutters, we could do that, and that would be a rule because we agreed to it. So if we can agree to something that outrageous, then we should be able to agree to something that's reasonable. And
the new state farm policy I want to talk about also has some language in there with time frames as far as 30 days after a dispute is this, and with the appraisers. So I like some things in it, some things I don't. But it's another one that people are gonna probably want to know because
what don't you like about the State Farm appraisal language?
Having to wait 30. I mean, it does have a time frame in there, but having to wait 30 days after dispute, I know the next day I need to email the umpire and say, let's get this scheduled. I don't need to wait 30 days after a dispute.
Right.
But I do like that, if I have a dispute, which that's become an issue also, they try to say, and there's the carrier appraisers, there's no dispute when we've exchanged positions. We don't have an award signed, so I consider that a dispute.
Right.
Going along with the drag them out type of deal. So now they're wanting to move the 30 days back. And
right. Did it put any timetable on the whole process?
Not the whole process, no. Pretty much that once it gets to the umpire, that's gone. I wish there was, once the umpire's engaged, we have 60 or 90 days. You have to do line items. Also, it's no lump sums. It states you have to, break it out into line items.
I mean, that's reasonable. I still don't understand the people that just. I understand there are certain cases, rare as they may be, where we just do an award. But I mean, like everything we do is based on an estimate, a line item estimate. It seems simple enough. Matter of fact, I just dealt with one the other day in my office where it was about a $700,000 loss, and it came back into my office, no estimate, just award, and it creates a problem for the carrier and potentially the insured,
and the contractor.
And to pay the award and figure out what's what. They don't know how they're going to get to their full ACV level because there's no scope.
Yeah, what do they do to recover the depreciation on? That makes it tough.
Right. Now what would you say? What would you say is? Just tell me about some of your more troublesome work that you've done, like troublesome appraisals or troublesome umpire stuff like that.
Probably the Kansas stuff. Texas was tough when I first got there. It's a little different level of appraiser, so But Kansas, I mean, the laws here there are horrible. I mean, half the policies say both have to agree to appraisal, so that just they haven't agreed to one demand that's been like that. And then the ones that do go to appraisal, they've totally stalled them out. I mean, I've had OAs tell me that the carrier told him to put the appraisal on hold.
I mean,
while they're telling the policyholder I'm, not doing what I'm supposed to do. But I learned to document through emails and, have a paper trail. So stalled it out for about 9 months, and then I finally the policyholders were able to find an attorney to get a court-appointed umpire, and then surprisingly they all started, to join the appraisal process again when the umpire got put in. But it was they would
right.
still be sitting there without an umpire. It's kind of what happened.
Well, and the other thing is, like in Kansas, you often have to bring all the talent from outside of Kansas.
Yeah,
for the appraisal.
Umpires are able to travel.
Yeah, and so basically, your umpires are always going to be more expensive because they've got travel costs associated with it. And of course, I also noticed that everybody out there wants to have some building consultant from Denver to be your umpire. And I'm like, okay, could we just not do the building consultant? Could we just somebody else? Give me an adjuster, just not a building consultant.
Yeah, it's it's a struggle there, but I did all right. It's pretty fair. But it would either be an experienced appraiser from Omaha or Kansas City or Oklahoma City, or a local guy that didn't know what an umpire was. It was which also dragged the process out, because now I'm having to educate the named appraiser on what an umpire is, that's just crazy.
But all things being equal, I would rather do that than have to deal with the appraisal mafia that shows up in other places.
Yeah.
I have one state where I'm working where the appraisal mafia is I mean, they really got a game going there. Okay.
Connecticut?
No.
Minnesota?
No. Minnesota's one, but I've actually done some work in Minnesota, and I've done some work in Connecticut without pissing off the appraisal mafia. I love doing things in Connecticut just because I love their matching statute.
It's beautiful out there in the fall, and
yeah.
My first appraisal in Connecticut, I show up, and the other appraisers in an S550 with tray tables in the back were signing paperwork on.
I mean, now
they were fair, but it was interesting.
Yeah. So I've got this one where, so I have this is so magnanimously weird that it's just hard to conceive. Okay. Because a lot of times when you have kind of an immature market, you also have not terribly good legal talent in that market.
Oh, 100%.
So in this particular market, the brainchild of the plaintiff's attorney got together with the defense attorney, and they decided to go to appraisal, and they decided on the umpire, which is weird. And then, that's bad enough. But then they actually wrote in the agreement that we could only use the carrier's engineer report as the scope of the appraisal.
What you could argue.
And we couldn't really argue it. It was basically just being guided by it. Okay. So now keep in mind, the worst part of this is the umpire sold a business with my opposing about 2 years ago. So they have they're really close. Okay.
Yeah.
But my opposing, he's my opposing in two places. He's my court appointed umpire in another place. And every single time this guy speaks to me, he speaks to me like I'm an unruly 12-year-old. I mean, just talks down to me. And so we're standing on this appraisal, and we have some 18-year-old siding. It has 3 holes in it that were caused by wind. The engineer said so. He surmised that was it. But they've decided that they're going to detach the siding and reset it because the engineer said it didn't need to be replaced. So I said, so guys, just answer me the question. The 2 principles we use here is like, kind, and quality, and direct physical damage. And my opposing looks straight over at me and goes, well, we're not doing that in this appraisal because they made all the rules for us. And I'm like, do you think it was their intent for you to do it this wrong? Do you think it was their intent for you to defraud the insured? Like there's mitigation and there's contents, but engineers don't do contents or mitigation generally, right? So those things aren't even being included. So I always say it's
did a memorandum for the appraisal panel that they signed and not you.
Yeah. So no, I mean, basically both attorneys signed off on this. Like they agreed to this. It became a court order. It's crazy. And so like I couldn't figure out for the life of me. Okay. I couldn't figure out why all these things are going on in this loss where it was just trying to just take a loss that's probably $110,000, $112,000 and turn it into a $30,000 loss. And I couldn't grasp it. And so after I was treated like such a dog, you know, when somebody treats you like a dog, you kind of dig in, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I immediately went to the local permitting office and they came out and looked at the loss with me. And they reminded me that this particular municipality has a 30% rule. So 30%, once you hit 30%, you have to bring the property up to code. It's their way of getting rid of all the riffraff in their city. Then they told me the value of what they put the structure at, and they put the value at like $98,000. So can you think why they were trying to keep it under 30 grand?
Oh yeah.
Because basically what this is turning into is a constructive total loss. Because when they pull a permit for this scope that's going to be coming out shortly, because there's no way they can get it that low. They've already agreed to about 45. Okay. But basically that's going to get taken straight down by the contractor to the city before the award's even signed. And they're going to deny the permit and give him a list of all the things he has to do before he'll be able to be issued a permit. Which means he's going to tear the structure down. Because the structure's from like 1922. So it probably isn't anywhere close. But I mean, like, to me, we could have been unbridled in this. We could have made our game, gone to the umpire, done our job, been able to run it just like normal. And probably it would have been over months ago and it would have been not a big deal.
A lot of the attorneys just don't know. I don't think they probably do it in the best interest, but it doesn't turn out well sometimes. If they're making rules for an appraisal, that when you're the appraiser,
I just think I think it's terrible behavior because I mean, you have the contract for insurance. You have that contract for insurance. It should be those are the rules, right? That's the basis of what you're doing, whatever the case may be. That was the agreement. Let's just live with it. And I get it, but it's I don't know. There's just been there's just an awful lot of people at this point that are doing appraisal that haven't one single clue what they're doing.
Yeah,
because you don't really do appraisal until you've been in the industry a long time and walk the hard walk. I mean, I think
and appraisal in Missouri on a residential is not the appraisal you're going to deal with in Houston on a large loss at all. It's a whole different ball game, and it's hard to explain the whole deal to people, and like you say, until you've been through it. Like an adjuster that doesn't know overhead and profit. It's not that he doesn't, 10 and 10 is fair to him because he's never ran a business and had, to deal with overhead. It gets expensive. Until you kind of go through that, it's hard to understand.
Yeah. The what are you seeing for O&P?
25 and 20 to 10 and 10. Occasionally I get somebody that says they're going to give me 5 and 5 as a favor.
Yeah, you're in Texas there,
right?
But
I just, and I'm not trying to get more money in the GC's pocket with this. I think the crews should get paid more is where I'm at.
You've got to, the most dangerous thing you can have on any project is a contractor who's not making money, because he's not going to give any love to your project because he's got to go get something else that pays him.
And they might have to cut corners because the insurance didn't pay for this item or that item, and it's not his fault because he has to keep his business going. But that makes it tough on them.
exactly. I have that conversation a lot. As a matter of fact, I have an umpire gig right now where I just, where one of their biggest arguments was O&P. And I asked one of the appraisers that was against that. I said, just do me a favor. Just call 3 contractors, any contractor. Just call them. Ask them what their real overhead is. And I said, there won't be one of them will tell you it's lower than 30%. They won't say it. Not one. Even a crappy contractor will know that because he's having to find other ways to make money in this estimate because he doesn't have that overhead and profit taken care of. And I said, that's key. But I'm still amazed at people who won't ask for reasonable overhead and profit. Like you come to appraisal, if you're not going to ask for it, you can't get it, right?
It's just I think the 10 and 10 has just been beat into everybody's head, and this is what it's supposed to be, industry standard. And when you do the math, it's not 10 and 10. I walk into a bank with a business model with 10 and 10, and they're going to laugh at me and tell me to come back. Probably.
I have a contractor in California that I work with a lot, and he doesn't put 10 and 10 on. He doesn't put overhead and profit on his estimate. He charges everything that's under overhead and profit in his estimate. So, he charges for his secretary, for his phones, for his insurance, for his trucks, for maintenance on his trucks. I mean, just on and on and on and on and on, all the things. And he says it really comes out to be about 30% over. He said, but I can't seem to sell them 30% overhead, but I can nickel and dime them to get to death on stuff that's related to the job. He said, I don't want to do it that way, but I mean, that's reasonable.
Oh yeah. Those were all used on that job. The phone, all that stuff was directly tied to that job.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. It worries me. Like, how the insurance industry to some degree has basically getting kind of to it. They're kind of harpooning the IA. They're making them a glorified estimator, or they're sending someone like the former Ladder Now, which is Seek Now, to come out and just build a scope that the desk adjuster is going to write an estimate on. And so what I find is that a lot of adjusters who've been in it like 5 or 6 years, a lot of them have started flipping over to appraisal more. And a lot of them have a lot of trouble doing that because all they know is adjusting. They don't understand that there's a difference between those two functions. And so that becomes a real terror for them. And you feel like, and it's also hard to educate them, because they think it's
sometimes.
Yeah.
It takes a while. I spent probably in 2020 on the 25 and 20 overhead and profit issue, probably an hour and a half with the guy that was like running a big adjusting firm. At the end of it, he couldn't, argue with a couple of my points, and it changed his mind. He's, I think he's a PA now and doing good. And,
yeah. I also think the carriers messed up pretty bad too when they started going after the real seasoned insurance adjusters, because those guys have become very good PAs who know how the whole continuum works, and
they're document properly and the rules and timelines. It's very important.
Yeah. They know all where all the bodies are buried, and I'm serious. I can watch those guys. And the speed at which they're able to handle a claim is, generally speaking, better than the people who never walk that walk. It speaks volumes to that experience. But in reality, the carriers have just are building this tribe of people that are very qualified, that are more qualified than most of the public adjusters on day one that they've had in the past. And they made that problem. I think personally, if you want to make all your problems go away in the insurance industry, have the guy show up and talk to the insured like he used to. Tell the insured about their duties after loss, the things they need to do. Tell him what he's going to do, what he's going to write, when he's going to be back in touch with them. Like
it's become real adversarial.
And the thing is, like, you can't get mad at somebody who's doing that and the guy who answers the phone and tells you where we are on our claim. I mean, I've got a claim going on right now. I had a fire in my house in December 3rd of last year.
Oh, I heard
And
you. I was there in Houston at the or
yeah,
Galveston at the
yeah,
PPA event and heard about that. That was
yeah. But
wow.
but but like like they sent a very good adjuster out, a guy that you or I would love to have as an opposing appraiser, because
Yeah,
he writes a tight sheet. He understands construction. He understands the process. He understands the stuff that is right on the cusp, like it might happen, so we have to pay for it in appraisal. He gets all that.
yeah,
He's just like, I've never gone to appraisal with this guy that we just didn't work it out. We're done. Like that kind of person. Just a joy to work with. And they sent him as the adjuster. And I'm like, yeah, this is going to go good. That guy spent 5.5 hours in my house. 5.5 hours. He crawled every square inch of my house. He came out, dropped his phone on the back of my truck, on speakerphone, called the desk adjuster and said, I'm going to send you a valuation. I'm not going to send you an estimate. I've tried for 5 hours to find a way to not make this go to policy limits. It's not here. It's a complete and total loss. And then they send Paul Davis out. Paul Davis spends 12 minutes in my structure and goes and does the same thing. Okay. I mean, the same thing. And so, like it took them like 140 days. They had put us in long-term housing, but it took them 140 days to issue a payment. And they did issue a payment that was about 70% of the dwelling coverage. They also gave me, this is the biggest joke ever. I had sent them a note and said, hey, look, could you just send us $30,000, our contents money? Because I want to stop renting a bunch of stuff, because it's just eating our ALE coverage away. And so if you give me 30,000, I could probably buy a washer and dryer, some beds, a couple of couches, stuff like that are obviously damaged in my house. And we could do that. And that would basically get, you guys wouldn't have to spend $4,000 a month on rental stuff.
yeah, makes sense.
And she calls me back and she says, they denied your request. I said, why'd they deny my request? And she said, well, because your contents estimate that we did was $13,000. And I said, I need you to kind of understand this. I said, if you walked 3 feet inside my bedroom, you'd be at 20 grand. Yeah. By the time you get midway through it, you'll be at 60. I said, there's just no way that that's true. None. I said, there's no way that's true. And then she says, and I'll never forget as long as I live, she goes, well, I never got your contents list. I said, actually, you did. She says, no, I didn't. I said, well, you did, because you sent that to the EUO attorney, because we discussed it during my examination under oath. She's like, no, I don't think so. I'm like, yeah, it's there. You want me to tell you what page it's on? I says, it's a 1,600 page file. I said, when your people spent 2 hours in my structure and never came back, I went ahead and did all the contents the way they were supposed to be done. I said, I've got better than 80 hours of content assessment in this structure. And I said, and I charged you for it in the estimate too. And she, and so she called me after she got it. She goes, okay, I'm sorry. I got your contents estimate. And I just said, look, let's do a full and final settlement. I want you to take that upstairs. And she called me yesterday and she goes, what do you mean by a full and final settlement? God bless. I said, just give me everything that's left. Okay. Just whatever's left. Just finish it out. It's super simple. But like the thing is, if I wanted, like, if my policy had appraisal in it, I would be calling somebody like you and say, hey, can you handle this? Because I know I could get somebody credible to do it. Right. But they changed my appraisal to if you and we agree. And we never agree until you take us to court. And then we agree. And, but I just think that it's become hard enough for people in general, Jeremy, that if they get anything beyond a basic water loss or a real basic water loss or a real basic roof replacement, I don't see how they can do it without help.
No, it's getting tough. And a lot of the things I see in an appraisal now that I'm doing repair to replacements or, certain line items, it's, why am I even seeing this? This is pretty crazy.
Well, and, I I do this thing when I'm working for the insured. I will tell my opposing, I'll say, before we meet, I say, hey, would you look in the claim file and would you get the original adjuster's information? And would you call the adjuster and talk to them about what they saw when they were? I said, chances are good their estimate and what came out was two separate things. We want to know what he saw. And it's so wild because about 2/3 of the time that appraiser comes back and says, we're going to do the roof, no problem, because he put in for roof replacement. It just made sense, like it's. I mean, and it feels good in some way because you were able to award that first intent, like that guy.
Yeah, and they don't like giving out the original adjuster anything, but normally if you can get that, there's enough information there to,
Yeah, you can find them. You can find them, and then the other thing I like to ask the carrier guys, and I get this surprisingly more than I would have expected to. I always ask them, I say, can you give me what the reserves were for this file? And, consequently you go to the file and the reserves are $100,000 and they've produced a bunch of estimates all the way up to $97,000, but not
your reserve was at 70%.
Yeah. And so they're like, and it's like a $220,000 loss. Well, they were never going to get there. And so then I can say, hey, look, maybe we could agree that the reserves were off. And believe it or not, I get them to call the carrier and say, your reserves were really messed up on this one. You might want to change them before we finish the appraisal. And believe it or not, people that do that often get more work from the carrier because it kept them from looking bad on their books. Think about it. They get dinged every time one comes in, but if they know it's coming in and it's going to be about this, then they can accommodate it where they don't have to sit in a meeting somewhere and say, what happened here? What'd you do wrong?
Yeah, the reserves are they get penalized.
Jeremy, what do you think about non-Xactimate pricing?
Like stability or just lump sum?
No, I mean like you would probably agree with me if I said that Xactimate rarely gets a window correctly price wise.
Yep, it's never 100%.
Okay, so like very often we do like a bid item for that, but I mean like if this is something that gets missed, and I had this conversation just the other day. Somebody said to me, they said, well, you cook the books and put bigger numbers on the line items. I'm like, no, I estimated the loss.
Like the material price change, if it's different than the exact monthly price.
Yeah, what I did was I looked at the local market. I called ABC. I found what they were selling for these things, and I put the price there, and then I put the labor there, and so it adjusted the price. And I'm talking to adjust the price by like 7%. Okay, it's not like terrible, but we have all these guys in the industry that think that Xactimate's price is the holy grail, right up until it's a roof that's 2,200 square feet and they decide that it's worth, 500 per square feet for per square,
Yeah.
There's a point, and I always say, like, if you can break it in one spot, why can't you break it in another? Because the EULA on Xactware, it says that for you to use their software, you have to agree not to not to be reliant on their database because it's historic. It looks back,
and you're
not forward.
Responsible in the end for your estimate and the price.
Right, and so like I very often like talk my estimate through with like contractors, just to see if like this makes sense, because sometimes a broken clock is right twice a day, but it's still not a good way to tell time. And some of the things like in Xactimate are broken. Some are not. Don't get me wrong. Like when we can go in and do mask and prep and covering the and doing all the things we do to prepare for painting. I think that's great because that's what most painters forget to charge for.
And it's that prep takes the most time. The painting is the easy part.
Right.
Prep work is probably 80% of that.
Right. And then the other thing that I gets me too is give me your opinion on this. Okay, you're replacing windows. It's an appraisal. They're not the original windows that are in there, but you're replacing them. So they don't have the flanges in them. So if you're replacing that window, are you going to do anything inside the room?
You have to.
What are you going to do?
Probably drywall work. If it has drywall, trim work. I mean, my company used to do windows, and that's part of the bid. Like, I don't care what you're doing, you're going to have an issue. You have to caulk it. I mean, something's going to happen.
Yeah, I have that conversation a lot because people say, yeah, we'll do the windows. We're not doing all that interior stuff. I'm like, well, what happens when you tear up the drywall? I mean, it's got a drywall return. I mean, I could almost understand it if it was a hardwood return, you know, like
I mean, even then
you still got drywall there. Yeah,
if there's windows, there's something on the inside, and the flange argument, it still needs to be to code. So you can't just slide a window in there. I mean, you got to put the seam tape. It has to be sealed properly. You cannot do that without addressing the trim and everything else.
I think we ought to do a big in-service on how windows installed properly. Because I would say that probably 90% of people that are in our industry have never seen a window be installed, have never installed a window, have no idea what the peculiarities are of that. I always remind somebody that, like when you replace windows, you actually have to measure every single one of them.
Exact.
I said it has to be dead on balls, and I said that's and most people don't even understand that when we start to do the windows, that's an action that actually has to take place. Somebody's got to commit labor time to do that, and if something's wrong there, it's going to make everything go wrong. So it's got to be done by somebody credible, and most people don't get it. Jeremy, I'm having a problem right now on one that I've got, and I don't have a good answer. And it bothers me when I don't have a good answer. I'm the umpire, and so we're talking about a house that's, $5-6 million house. And these people have an RV in the driveway that's 2.6 million. These people don't have anything that's not real nice. Okay. So all the windows on the rear of this property got damaged by the peril. Everybody agrees to it. Both appraisers agreed to it. Well, this house has 87 windows. It had all wood windows. Nice wood windows. Probably not Marvin level nice, but pretty darn nice. Okay.
Dark stain on the inside of property.
I mean, it looks like you were in a bank. It was just nice. Okay. So when they go to replace these, I'm quite certain that somebody screwed up badly here. They said that they were told that they couldn't replace them with a wood window. It had to be vinyl, which is not true. This is in Florida, and Florida has part numbers for wood windows. I get a Marvin window that's vinyl clad on the outside and wood on the inside. We could get.
Yeah. Okay.
But they went ahead and bought the vinyl windows. Okay. So one, they had really nice wood windows. So we're obligated.
They said it was a code thing.
They said it was code. Yeah, they said it was code. So they said it was code that you can't replace them with that. So they had really nice windows. So they went to like Anderson or Pella or somebody, and they got like the best windows they make. The appraiser comes in with a $460,000 price on the windows. His opposing appraiser gave all the windows, but he charged them basically at $30 per square foot of fenestration.
I mean, that's $2,000 a window. That's not.
I know.
That's not a lot.
I know. So I have one guy at like $100,000 and the other guy at $460,000. So I asked the guy that's asking for the $437,000 of the windows. I said, "Can you send me some paperwork on this?" And he sends me where the insured has spent $125,000 replacing half the windows. But some of the most expensive windows are the rest of the house. I know why it's going to be more expensive in some other areas. It's basically they did them all along the back of the house. But I still don't know what the path to like, kind, and quality is. Like they had a good window. Did they get the best window? You're talking about 45% of the loss is just these windows. And I feel like the only way I'm going to be able to do it is if I get from the vendor, this is the contract we have from them. This is how much they paid so far, and this is what we're going to do.
Like the Pella print off where they'll have
Yeah.
each measurement. And
Yeah. So like we know that they've spent cash on everything else, right? So on one hand, I feel like, yeah, we should give them more money. On the other hand, I'm like, how much more money? And it bugs me to death because I can't get somebody to give me the full paperwork.
and that makes you nervous when they don't want to show you.
It makes me bad nervous. I'm about to spend. I mean, I might be spending $1 million worth of the carrier's money, and it bugs me to death because I've got to have something legit going back to the carrier. I just can't do it. You know,
you got to make sense and be documented.
Yeah, I asked somebody the other day. I asked him. I said, "How much do you think that I spent of the carrier's money last year?" They go, "I don't know." I said, "It was right under $800 million." I said, "If you think for 1 minute I don't like ponder all of this in ways that you can't imagine, because it bothers me so much, because I just don't want to be wrong."
You can't.
Yeah.
You're wrong one time, and they like the Kansas deal with me. I do the right thing, and totally impartial, and then I end up on a law blog that I'm whatever they said. And
look, if they're talking about you, it's because you did something right. That's the truth. Very often do they talk about you if you did something wrong.
I mean, I still get people like, I talked to somebody last week. Are you still stricken in Kansas? And that never even happened. And if you really read got into it, you see. But it's they make it tough. And that's, I did everything by the book, and they still try. It's.
I know it's the look, when years ago I was working with a contractor, helping him out on estimates and just helping him just do it. They had a huge weight of ice and snow event there, ice dams and weight of ice and snow, and it was major cat. Okay, and so I'm standing in this house, and he sent me over there because the adjuster's going to come. And so the insured's there, and I'm there, and the adjuster's there. And the back wall in this house was a complete ice cube. It even, like, you could look at the power box in the back, and it was just a big ice cube. And of course, there was no power in the house. And so I said to the adjuster, I said, what we need to do is a controlled thaw. We need to bring enough power here so we can do a controlled thaw, so we can get this out of here without further damaging the property. We can kind of contain the loss this way. And she says, well, I don't believe it's all wet. And I took the moisture meter and I put it up, and she says to me, she goes, "You're crazy, and you're not going to get this from me. And if you pull that moisture meter out again, I'm gonna shove it up your ass." And I just kind of breathed deep, and I looked at the insured. I said, "Hey, I need you to ask her to leave, and I need you to call the company and ask them to send somebody that can adequately adjust your claim without using profanity." And she wheeled around on me and she says, "I'm going to take you down." I got out of that meeting. I went to another one, and on the next one I went to, same carrier, 3 full SUVs of SIU guys showed up on the loss. It's like 12 people. Okay. And they walk into this just basic residence. Okay.
Looked like they were serving a warrant or something.
And I looked at the insured, and I said, "Tell us we all have to leave, okay? All of us. Tell us, everybody, to get out of your house." I said, we'll reboot this some other time. I said, you don't have to deal with this. And she kicked us all out. And I was walking in my truck, and this guy said, "We're going to get you on your next one too." And I'm like, "I'm not party to the claim. I don't know what you're talking about." And I got in the truck and drove away. My phone rings, and one of these SIU guys says to me, "Hey, you better back off, or, we're going to do this and this and this," and was like looking on LexisNexis and saying, like, "We may tell such and such this and such and such this and such and such this." And they're like talking about my dead ex-wife and all this stuff. I mean, it's just weird. Okay. And it was obvious they were just kind of trying to intimidate me. And finally, at the end of that, they said, we'd like to do a recorded statement with you. We need to get someplace that's quiet. I'm pulled over at this point. I'm texting my lawyer in Connecticut, and and I said, yeah, let me give you the address. There's a quiet place there that I have to go there anyway, and there's a quiet place in that building. And he goes, okay. I gave him the address, and I pull up, and when I pull up, and the lawyer's standing out in the parking lot with his assistant with a camera, and the guy starts walking up, and he goes, hey, I'm going to need your name. And the guy says, I'm not giving you my name. He goes, no, I'm going to need your name. And he says, I'm not giving it to you. And he looked at me and said, we're not done with you. He went and got his car and drove off. He didn't realize we already had his license plate. But the attorney and I went down to the courthouse. The judge says, what do you need? And he walks up and he says, I need a restraining order against this carrier to leave my client alone. And I need to depose them so I can figure out who's been involved in this action against him. And the judge says, how many people do you need subpoenaed? He said 230. And I looked at him. He goes, it's everybody in their office. And the judge looks over and says to the sheriff, he says, tell him we're going to need about 10 sheriffs to meet at the courthouse in about 10 minutes. He said, you got all the names? He says, yep. He says, I've got them all written up. He says, okay, we'll link them. We'll do it. He says, first one's going to start tomorrow, and you're going to do it in the back room behind the court. He says, I'm going to watch what's going on here. I look at him and I say, well, first of all, we went across town and we sat in the parking lot of that particular insurance company and watched all these cops just pull to the front door and then just get out and just swarm this place and serve everybody. And I asked the attorney, I said, do you want me to be there for the depositions in the morning? He said, no, you don't need to be. He says, nobody's coming. I said, what do you mean nobody's coming? He says, nobody's coming. He says, just their attorney with a check. That's all that's happened. That's the whole thing. I'm like, you're kidding me. He goes, nope, that's it. And sure enough, 9:10 in the morning, he called me up and he said, I need to know. He says, I got the money. Now I need to know what else you want. I said, I want them to write me up in their system. I want them to delete all their comments out of their system. And I want them to write in their system that I'm a reasonable claims person. And I'm very easy to get along with. And I said, and I want them to lock the record where it'll always say that. And they did it.
They put the heat on you sometimes. If even if you're doing the right thing, it happens. And just tell people you got to do things right, and nothing happens.
Well, here's the thing. If you do everything right and you get blackballed for it at some point, that will turn around at some point. It always will, because at the end of the day, doing it right is ultimately going to win the day. I mean, just look at like the appraisers that are in the business. Okay. The guys who are just riffraff don't seem to be able to stay in the game for very long. The guys who do it really well, that have some stones in their ability to assess things, they seem to stay longer. Don't get me wrong. There's some bad characters. There's some truly heinous people. I mean, I told you about the guy who treats me like a 12-year-old. That's one that I think is kind of heinous.
I stopped taking things personal, and it got better. And it seems the nicer I am, and just like I don't care, it bothers them more. So that's the route I take now. I had a guy say to me one day on an appraisal. He said, I didn't like working with you on this appraisal. I said, why? He says, because I don't have any good reason to tear up your estimate. And I said, well, wouldn't it have been easier if you just told me that during the process and we just got the umpire to ink it rather than going through the pageantry? He's like, well, I never thought about it that way. I'm like, yeah. I said, why don't you I said, if nothing else could happen in the whole world, if we can't be really honest on the panel, then there's no chance for us, you know? And yeah, some of those guys just go to the umpire, I think, to not have it on them. I don't like it, but I understand it. But
do you ever bring the umpire to the party on day one?
No.
I have about a dozen people that will bring me on day one because they only want to go to the site one time and they know they're not going to agree. Like all these
I
are
do
guys.
that.
Oh,
I do that. Where if I know me and the other guy know what's going to happen, we some rough positions, and then we just, why waste time? Yeah, why go through this dance when we know we're going to end up?
yeah, yeah. Where are you originally from?
Kansas.
Kansas. Kansas is an interesting place, man. That is.
No public adjusters on residential, and it's half the policies say both people have to agree to appraisal. So it's pretty much you have a $50,000 claim, it's a lawsuit only. It's tough.
Yeah. And then I've noticed the ones out there too, like some of the Farm Bureau ones, say that they'll go to arbitration,
Mm-hmm.
but then in another part they say they'll pay on a court order, arbitration order, or appraisal award. And so
when we pay, yeah,
yeah, and we use the when we pay to actually put it in appraisal because they agreed they would pay it like that.
Well, in the mediation ones, they price people out of being able to help them with the mediation. It's they bring in a big lawyer from Kansas City, and your old hometown $500 lawyer is not going to do well.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I like what the way some people do it, where they don't bring lawyers in at all. They bring claims professionals in to do it. I think that works out reasonably, and it's reasonably cost because it's very similar to an appraisal at that point. You just have experts speaking to you.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, in Kansas, it's not really an option to get an attorney either with the fee statutes and just the whole rules and laws and regulations. It's pretty much appraisal or nothing on some of them.
Yeah, I did one out in Nebraska, and my opposing told me, he said, I will agree to your numbers if you will prove to me that this location that was a meat packing facility turned into a residence that has 17 bedrooms and only one of those bedrooms has windows. If you can prove to me that this isn't a sex trafficking location in the middle of this field, he says, then I will pay it. I said, dude, I think that's what it is, but I nobody will tell me. I mean, it was 5 miles off the main road in the middle of a field, and like they could house like 80 people there.
I don't know. Weird.
Yeah. Well, you think people come out there for their Airbnb to sit in the field in the dead of winter? No, not going to happen. Yeah, we see so much crazy stuff, but Jeremy, I think that one of the problems with our industry is after you've stood in this crazy for a few years, everything else you could do for a living is boring.
Yep. Yeah.
And so we're stuck.
It's always evolving, and you got to stay on top of it. What worked 5 years ago, may not work today, and you have to stay up on it. Like with the new state farm language and things like that, and they're always trying to push things through the legislature, to change that up. So that always happens.
Yeah, I think that I just wish we could I wish we could just stick with the 168 line policy that it started off with, where it set that basic appraisal language, and it worked for 100 years just fine.
Well, it worked is why it probably is getting changed.
Yeah,
I'd like that with some timelines on exchanging scopes and things like that. Rough timelines. Just
I don't mind though. I think like I told the guys in Florida what I wanted them to make a law that says that that they have to use this appraisal clause, like the standard appraisal clause, and that the process is 60 days to invocation of umpire and 30 days to after that invocation to settle it. So it's a 90-day process.
Yeah. And
that's what I asked for him. I asked for him not to meddle in the way that it's done, just put some timelines on it and make it where it's a standard. I said, because you should at least get equal protection, under the law. It should be something standard. Of course, in Florida, they also went, we have a matching statute in Florida, and a couple of insurance companies went to the commissioner of insurance and said, we don't think we want to actually pay for that. And he says, but it's the law. And they said, well, we thought we could just give some percentage. he goes, okay. And they give 1% for matching.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's nice.
My carrier, true story, my carrier changed my policy 4 days after I bought it to say that my ordinance and law only covered that which is damaged. So how would you apply ordinance and law at all on that claim?
To things that aren't there.
I mean, it would be impossible. Incidentally, they didn't do that in their actually adjusting of the claim, because obviously they think it's preposterous too. But it takes all kinds, man. But the so what? I mean, have you had a good year so far?
Yeah,
been busy.
I tore my Achilles last year and was in a walking boot for a while. I got out of it in January and been running nonstop.
All right. Yeah, it's been an interesting year just with all that's been going on in the Midwest. I mean, that's just that's right up your alley.
A bunch of work even before the hurricane, and I think with those wind events like that, be a lot more appraisals and PAs and attorneys needed.
I just call all those. My favorite type of claim is what I call an argument maker, because it like we had Hurricane Sally come to Pensacola, Florida, and sure, it was a little Category 2 storm, but the little Cat 2 moved at like 1 mile per hour. So they had tropical storm and hurricane winds for 23 hours. So if you had any kind of deficiency in your property, because of the consistency of the wind, it looked like a strong Cat 3. So they came into the thing saying, hey, there won't be any window problems here, but if I batter your windows for 23 hours, if there's a problem, you got it.
Yeah, I had a Hurricane Harvey file, and it, slow rotating, just rain for days. Flat roof. Well, you had like 3 foot of water there, like a swimming pool, and they said that it wasn't installed right. It what well, no roof is supposed to get that much rain in that amount of time period. So
right.
And the wind claims, not many people know how to argue those right. I don't think
they don't. I mean, the thing is, until we get the people that don't understand losses to stop thinking everything's a complete loss, a total loss, and we get the people who look at a total loss and think it's hardly a loss, we're going to have work forever. Because as long as those people exist, I called the adjuster for when I was an umpire on not long ago, and I said, hey, look, we turned in that award. I want to know what you guys thought about it. And he goes, well, he says, I looked at your scope and it was just kind of legit. Like that's the way it should have been in the beginning. He says, so nobody's upset by it. It's just we missed it by 100 miles, And I watched another appraiser, my opposing appraiser, called the carrier from the site one day and said, hey, we're taking a bath on this one. I mean, you guys phoned this one in bad. I mean, bad, like triple it. Okay. Just triple it, because that's what it's going to be. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to have to sign. And, but if you pulled the wrong appraiser there, what would that been?
Well, it's a lot of people will get different results with the same umpire, because my mentor told me one time I got stuck with not a very good umpire, but it was a larger loss. So he just told me that if I document it enough to where he can't say no, he'll agree to it. And I mean, I wrote a 50-page PowerPoint presentation with photos and you name it. And he couldn't say no.
We've always been told it's not length, it's girth. It's true. It's true. It's I do something on large appraisals that it's often very annoying to my opposing. Okay. But I go to a very analog process when I have a really big loss. I print everything, every single thing. I tab it out and I make a murder book out of it. Because on a large loss, you're going to have historical information you need. You're going to need policy information. You're going to need what they've repaired, what they haven't. You're going to need everything. And so I'll do that, and then I'll put my estimate on it, and then I'll put my annotation on top of that, and I'll put that in that thing, and then I'll go down and have it copied and send it to the umpire and to my opposing. And I've had about 5 different umpires tell me that it is difficult to say no to me when FedEx shows up with a 40-pound book, and that you've basically isolated everything you want in this, and you've said a reason why. He said it becomes very difficult not to give you what you want. And I made the point to some.
In the deposition, you didn't pay for this, and you saw this information here. I mean, that's kind of, I think, why it works.
Yeah, and the other thing, Jeremy, that I've been talking about a lot lately that people just don't seem to understand is there's some people who do training for appraisal. There's some people who have been in the business a long time who says that we work without liability. And I don't know any professional that holds himself out at all, okay, that doesn't carry liability as a professional. And I watched an umpire violate a rule of like, kind, and quality. I mean, harshly, like saying temporary plumbing was permanent plumbing in the ceiling versus temporary work in the ceiling, which wasn't even the same kind of pipe, and just abandoning the slab where it was. I said they were DR Hortoning their house. And but like, he shut this thing down and paid for the temporary plumbing as permanent plumbing. And about 6 minutes after the appraisal was over, a lawyer sent him a note that said, "I'm going to need a copy of your E&O coverage." And he wrote him back and says, "I'm not giving it to you." And the guy dropped a lawsuit on him that day. He's suing him and his
appraisal.
What's that?
There is definitely liability. I do hear it's the Wild West, and you can kind of do what you want. And that's
I disagree.
Think we have more rules than anybody else, probably.
I think
it changes per state you're in, so you have to learn. This is how you do things here. Depending on the state, also.
Yeah, but I always say it's almost a biblical principle. If we have 3 reasonable people, we're going to get to a reasonable result. If that's the case, if we don't get close, we're probably not being honest. But but that guy right there that I just told you about, his E&O coverage paid out $78,000 2 days later. The only funny part about that was the carrier had told him that he would carry no liability because there was some contentious things about this going in. The carrier told him that he would carry no liability. And so he had his liability carrier contact his E&O carrier, basically go after the carrier, and they ended up having to pay the $78,000 back to his insurance carrier. So
subrogated it.
Yeah. So because they put it on paper, it was really funny. But no, that guy's still mad at me. And I told him, I said, you know what? I didn't do that to you. I didn't do that.
People make mistakes. That's why it's there.
I said, I told you you were making a bad mistake because you weren't adhering to like, kind, and quality. I said, when I turn this into my client, I'm going to have to tell them what happened in the appraisal generally. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, but I said, keep in mind what you did. This gentleman, because they wouldn't pay his claim, they wouldn't give him ALE, they wouldn't give him anything. So what's a guy got to do? He had bad PECs, like that bad formulary of PECs. And so like when it fails, it all fails at the same time. Yep. He got a plumber to come in. The plumber's like, he says, I can't fix this. He says, it's faulty. And so after not being, he needed to have running water for his family. So he called the plumber and said, do something temporary. And the plumber said, look, he said, your cold water is going to be 120 degrees during the day. He says, if it gets very cold around here, it's going to hardly run at all. He says, this is temporary, and that's all it is. It's just plastic pipe, flexible plastic pipe. That's all it is. It's not even meant to be a long-term deal. And so I just find the whole thing interesting. And I told a panel just the other day, I was talking to them. I said, guys, we just got to get this done. I don't want to get sued.
Yeah. And
they all look at you like, what do you know? I'm like, I know we're on the menu. That's what I know.
It's, you got to do everything by the book, and you're going to have to go through some things, and document is
okay.
What I do.
Jeremy, you want You want to do some umpiring for me out in Kansas?
Yeah.
All right. I put you on the list. I did the other day, actually.
I'm not stricken, contrary to the.
You're not stricken. I always tell them the same thing. I always tell the guys about umpires. I said, look, I don't need anybody that's a ringer for me. Ever.
No,
I don't want anybody like that.
I need somebody fair. That's all.
I said, I just need somebody fair. And generally speaking, fair equals somebody who has worked in the industry and out of the industry. I said, that seems to be the real key to getting somebody that's really, really fair. And I said, and that's one reason why I'm fair, because I've served the whole industry my entire career. I just, I see everybody's point of view, really. Except sometimes some of the PAs, I can't get to where they go. You can't see. I fired one.
They're a little wild sometimes.
Yeah, I fired one time after I finished an appraisal with him, and I called him up. I said, "You're not going to get your number." He says, "Why not?" I said, "You have $950,000 worth of HEPA vacuuming in a building that has no damage, in a building they've lived in nonstop. It's a hotel. They've lived in without any. They didn't have one room down, not one." I said, the owner of the hotel said the roof was a little cheesed up, but this building's okay. It didn't take any water. I said, so you got a $550,000 loss. It's not a $3 million loss. You know what that cat did? So I sign it and my umpire signs it. Now I'm his appraiser, and they've been trying to get this into court for 2 years to set aside our award. Well, I got to just ask you a question. If you didn't pay me for my work and you didn't pay the umpire for their work, how do you think that's going to go when it gets to court? I mean, really? I mean, this happens to be in Louisiana, and if they subpoena you in Louisiana, you go, because otherwise they'll come get you. If they subpoena you in Florida, you say, sorry, we got confidentiality and you'll have to get them to allow me to do it. Not there. They're like, you have nothing. You're going to come talk to us.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is different. It is different. They have that Napoleonic.
And they haven't yet, so.
Yeah. All right, my friend.
But they were unreasonable deposition requests, so I didn't respond.
Yeah, I just love when they try to make me a fact witness. I'm like, it's like, but you're a fact witness. We don't have to pay you. I'm like, I don't have to show up either. You
gotta pay people to show up for work.
He's
a
like,
lot of people don't know that you can charge for that. It's work. Nobody works for free.
Yeah, I just tell them I'm like a production. I'm like a manufacturing house. I only have so many hours. So when I give you a couple of my hours, I'm giving it away. I said, so I'm never going to get it back, because I won't get it back. It's opportunity cost, and it's terrible. And they did make me go to one of them one time, and they didn't pay me. And they asked me, could I tell them about this building? I said, it has a brick veneer.
Tell them you have a report for $5,000, you would say.
Yeah. And then they go, well, what's going on? What about this room? I said, it has 4 walls, 2 windows, baseboard, and drywall. And there is a fan with a light. You asked me what I knew about that room. That's what I recall about the room. We did that for 2 hours.
I was going to say, how long did that go on?
It went for 2 hours. I do this other thing in deposition though. If they get really, really rowdy and they're just being real crude, I start talking like this, really, really slow. And then I say, I'm gonna have to think on that. And then I just sit there for 3 minutes. And then I go, no.
It's a weird deal. I know they're trying to get me mad, and I just stay calm.
Yeah, I just don't. The only time I ever get a little gruff with them is when they say, "Mr. Herring, would you explain to us how you manipulated the Xactimate software?" And I would just always look at, like, if I'm working for the plaintiff, I always look at plaintiff counsel. I'm like, everybody's going to need to be quiet now. You keep everybody quiet because this guy didn't have any strategy whatsoever. He just basically did a veil attempt to call me fraudulent. I said, and since he did that, we're going to explain to him how we're supposed to estimate. And I need time to answer the question. And I just go through it. And then I stop at the end of it and go, and by the way, your adjuster and your consultant have no Xactimate certification at all. I'm a level 3 Xactimate provider, and I've been that for like 10 years. I'm like, it makes sense that I would know how to do it better than them because they're hacks and I'm a professional.
Well, and they probably don't know about the material pricing and those type of things. They've never seen it. A lot of them, it almost turns into a teaching experience.
But like it's what I do like on large loss. If we're going to be working on like 16 floors, I take somebody to the building and I give them a stopwatch, and I have them carry a bag of tools and a 5-gallon bucket with some weight to it, and I say, go to the first floor, second floor, third floor, and just keep coming back, and we get a time for that movement because you got to go through security, you got to get somebody to walk you up, and so they'll eventually ask me, why is the drywall work on the 7th floor more expensive than the 2nd floor? I'm like, because the labor efficiency is less there because they take some more time, for one thing.
In my early 20s, I worked on some 300-foot windmills.
Oh, wow.
I was afraid of heights when I got there, but we were, early 20s and making $2,500 a week. It was all right.
You figured it out.
We literally would go up in the cab and do rust prevention, and it would take 15 minutes, but getting everything up in that 300-foot climb straight up a ladder was, an hour and a half. And
right.
That does need to be factored. Responsible and Xactimate to price it right. You're not pricing it right if your first floor, drywall is the same as the 6th.
Yeah. And it's, and you'd think that would be like a really simple concept for people, but it's a very difficult concept until you break it down to its simplest form. They just can't see it. They also never can understand, like somebody asked me once, he says, why do you have $120,000 worth of parking cost? I'm like, because the only place they can park is across the street, and it costs this much every day.
Yeah, inner city parking's huge in certain areas. That's a big ordeal. Security overnight so your materials don't get stolen. There's things that are, especially in Houston downtown, if you don't have it tied down, it's going to be gone in the morning.
Boy, isn't that the truth? I've been there twice in the last 5 years where I literally left something on my console, like a piece of paper on my console, and they bust my window to get whatever that piece of paper is. There's nothing else in my truck.
I was at a umpire meeting at a district judge's who was court-appointed umpire. Didn't take more than an hour. Halfway through, the carrier appraiser's truck got broken into, and they stole his gun. Middle of the day at a law office, like,
that's crazy. That is crazy. Makes you think you really should have those DVRs on your car, huh?
Well, the newer Ford F-250s, they have that issue to where you can, that door handle thing where they can just pop it pretty easy. But it was pretty, a district judge's office and at 3:00. And
oh yeah. I got mine broken into at a bank. It was on tape. It was on tape. They didn't care. They literally pulled right up next to me. I walked in the bank. They stepped out, busted my window, grabbed what they grabbed, got in their car, and drove away.
Yeah, and it's getting worse with the economy, I think.
I'll tell you this:
if you're going to Houston, lock your ladder up.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say is that our industry is definitely recession proof. Yeah. Our industry is not inflation proof, and that is, I've learned that over and over again here lately. Because that even people that sometimes would hire you in another market, they'll stay away from you because they can't stand to pay a decent wage because they're tight. I get it. Everything's more expensive. Even my employees are more expensive.
But I don't think getting a lesser appraiser ever equates to a better outcome.
No, get yourself a good get yourself that guy that does $750 and prepare for a terrible award. I every time.
I just think it's you get what you pay for, and you're only going to get so much work out of somebody for $750 or $500. And I can't leave money on the table or not do it right.
I'd rather you not hire me if you just
got to, I'm going to argue it.
Well, and look, to that point, you can hire, like in my shop, you can hire like some of my other appraisers for cheaper than me. But when given the option, they're going to pay more and get me. I raised the rate because I didn't want them to get me. I wanted to get the other people, but they didn't work because they're going to buy, people are going to buy talent. It's the same reason why I pay a decent amount for an umpire. I want talent. I want somebody who feels real good about what they're doing.
Yep. Yeah, I agree on the umpire deal. It's where they have some people, say he's a little expensive or, but you can't put a price on a fair award. I know that.
That's true. And to be honest with you, I mean, even I think a lot of appraisal fees are really kind of paid for in awards sometimes where people don't really realize it. I think we do a lot of paying of fees that they just can't see. Of course, nobody's going to ever understand that because it's not like we put a line item.
Yeah.
Of course, if I had my way, I'd want all the carriers to charge just a little more and pay engineer, PA, IA, appraisers, umpires. Just pay all the fees.
Well, I think it should be included in the award, stuff like that. I've seen the PIA fee on some scopes lately.
Yeah,
I feel that's part of that loss, and it says, a loss, any dollar that's for this loss should be covered.
Yeah, by the strictest definition, you're right. Well, Jeremy, I got to get to it, but it's been good to talk to you.
Yep, I appreciate it.
I hope that I'll see you soon in your neck of the woods. Okay, man. You take care. Bye.